I've avoided telling this story for a long time. Not because I think people won't believe it, but because I don't fully believe it myself, and I don't like the explanation my brain created to survive it. I live in a rural area, always have. Long dirt roads, old fences, abandoned farms that never get demolished because no one sees a reason to touch them. Out there, things don't disappear, they just sit and wait. At the time, I worked night shifts at a storage facility about 40 minutes from home. I drove the same road every night, same turns, same mailboxes, same stretch of empty land where nothing ever happened. That routine mattered, because when nothing ever happens, the night trains you to relax. That night, I left work around 2:30 in the morning, maybe later. I remember feeling heavy. The air was thick. No wind, no insects, just one of those nights where sound carries too far. I decided to take an old shortcut I hadn't used in years. It cut through abandoned farmland, technically private property, but no one lived there anymore. Everyone local used it when they were tired enough. I remember thinking it would save me 10 minutes. That's it. No warning, no dread, no bad feeling, just a tired man choosing the shorter road. The entrance was barely visible, 2 tire tracks in tall grass. My headlights dragged across broken fence posts and wire that looked older than I was. Trees stood dead and pale like bones stuck in the ground. It was quiet. Not eerie quiet, just rural quiet, the kind you stop noticing after a lifetime. Then I heard hoofbeats. Distant, but clear. At first I smiled. Wild horses weren't common, but they weren't impossible either. I figured one was running somewhere beyond the fence line. The rhythm was fast and getting closer. I slowed the car and rolled the window down. The air that hit my face felt wrong. Hot, not warm, hot, like stepping too close to an engine that's been running for hours. The hoofbeats didn't approach. They surrounded. The sound started circling the car, fast enough that it felt intentional. I looked left. The fence was shaking, not lightly, violently. The wire blurred in my headlights as if it was being slammed from the other side. The posts vibrated in the ground. Something massive was hitting them. But there was nothing there. No shape, no body, just movement and heat. A wave of heat rolled into the car. My steering wheel felt warm under my palms. I glanced at the dashboard, thinking my engine had failed. Everything was normal. The hoofbeats multiplied. There wasn't one anymore. There were many, running in tight circles. The ground started to hum beneath me. I felt it through the seat, through my ribs. Then I saw the light. Not directly. In the corner of my eye, streaks of orange, reflections that didn't match anything in front of me. I turned my head. For half a second, I saw them. Shapes running behind the fence, horse-shaped but wrong. Their bodies looked cracked open with light. Not flames, not fire like you see in movies, more like heat made visible, like something burning from the inside. And the sound they made wasn't animal. This was screaming. Human screaming, layered, overlapping, dragged through something deeper than a throat should allow. I hit the gas. I didn't think, didn't reason. My foot just slammed down, and the car fishtailed on the dirt. The hoofbeats followed instantly, still circling, still screaming. The fence kept rattling beside me like it was alive and trying to keep pace. I refused to look again. I locked my eyes on the road, but the light stayed in my peripheral vision. Orange flashes, running, keeping up with me. The heat inside the car climbed so fast, my skin prickled. I smelled metal, hot metal, like brakes burning on a downhill road. I thought the engine would die. I thought I was going to stall right there in the dark with whatever was running beside me. And then everything stopped. No fade, no slowdown, just silence. The heat vanished, the movement vanished, the screaming cut off so clean it felt like the world had been muted. The silence after was worse. I didn't slow down. I didn't breathe properly until my tires hit pavement again. When I reached asphalt, I realized my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the wheel. I drove home without looking in the mirrors. When I parked, the hood of my car was warm, too warm for a normal drive. I stood there with my hand on it, trying to explain the night away. Stress, fatigue, night hallucination. That's what I told myself. I went inside, didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the screaming again. Not horses, people. Layered voices trapped in a single sound. This happened when I was 14. I'm in my 30s now, and I still don't sleep well when the house is quiet. Back then, my parents both worked late, every night. They commuted across town, buses both ways, long hours. They didn't want the house empty, so after school I went straight home and stayed there alone until after midnight. It was a quiet neighborhood, too quiet, the kind of quiet where sound carries, where every creak feels intentional, like the house is aware of you. I didn't have friends. I was overweight, awkward, an easy target at school. The abuse wasn't occasional, it was daily, relentless. By the time I got home, I didn't want to exist in the real world anymore. So I disappeared into my computer. Old MMO games, cheap headset, keyboard glowing in the dark. That was my life. And that's when the other things started. At first, I blamed stress, loneliness, a kid left alone too long. I'd see movement in the corner of my eye, like someone crossing a doorway. I'd hear footsteps in the hallway, soft, deliberate, pacing. Sometimes the couch would creak, like someone sitting down. I'd freeze in my chair and listen. Nothing. Kitchen plates shifting, a glass clinking. Always small sounds, never loud enough to prove anything, just enough to make my skin crawl. And I never told my parents. I didn't want them thinking I was broken. The night the cat came in, everything escalated. I remember the window being open just a few inches, summer air, no wind. I heard a soft thud behind me. Not loud, just a landing. I turned. There was a black cat standing in the living room, completely still, watching me. I have no idea how it got inside. The window was barely open, but there it was. It didn't look scared, didn't hiss, didn't run. It just observed. I've always loved animals, so I crouched slowly, held out my hand, and spoke softly. "Hey, buddy, you lost?" The cat stepped back, not afraid, just unmoved. But it didn't leave. It followed me, room to room, silent, close enough that I could always feel it behind me, watching. After maybe 20 minutes, it let me touch it. The fur was warm, too warm. It started purring immediately, deep, vibrating through my fingers, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief, like I wasn't alone anymore. I poured milk into a bowl, set it down, and went back to my game. The cat stayed in the doorway, not drinking, just staring at me. Then I saw movement in the glass of my door, a reflection. Something ran past the window, fast. My heart spiked. I spun around, expecting the cat, but it was still in the doorway, watching me. It sounded like a truck slammed into the house. The entire structure shook, the floor vibrated. For one impossible second, I thought a car had hit the building. I ran through the house. Nothing was broken, nothing out of place, everything perfectly normal. And that scared me more. Then the lights flickered, once, twice. Every room went dark, except the living room, the room the cat came from. I stood there, breathing hard, staring at the glow down the hallway. And I swear I saw movement outside, shadows circling the house, human shapes. I didn't think, I just ran, locked every door, every window. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the latch. Someone was trying to get in. I could feel it. Not guess, not imagine, feel. I grabbed the house phone. The line was dead. No dial tone, just static. The cat meowed behind me. Not loud, not normal. It sounded directed, like it was calling me. It walked down the hallway toward my parents' bedroom, stopped at the door, looked back at me, and I followed. I don't know why. I locked the bedroom door and crawled under the bed. I pulled the cat against my chest. It wasn't shaking. It wasn't trying to escape. It just breathed, slow, steady, like it knew exactly how much time we had left. The banging stopped, and the silence that followed was worse. I could hear my blood in my ears. Then the doorknob turned. The door exploded open. Light flooded the room. Footsteps. Two figures dropped to their knees, fast, desperate. Hands grabbed my arms. Son, look at me. The lights were on. The house untouched. No broken windows, no forced doors, nothing out of place. The phone was working. My dad held my shoulders, asking what happened. They had come home early that night, walked in and couldn't find me, called my name, checked every room, until they heard crying coming from the bedroom, from under the bed. I tried to explain everything, the noises, the footsteps, the shadows, the invasion, and the cat. I turned my head immediately. He should have been there. My arms still remembered his warmth. But there was nothing. No fur on the floor, no paw prints, no bowl of milk in the kitchen. Nothing. My parents looked at each other. There was no cat in the house. There never had been. I'm over 30 now, and I still hate silence. But sometimes, when the house is dark, I feel something brush against my leg. A calm presence, familiar, like it's saying, "I never left." And I believe, with the certainty of a grown man, that whatever entered my house that night never found me, because I wasn't alone, and I don't think I ever was. I am 74 years old, and in all that time there is only one night from my childhood that still wakes me up with the taste of iron in my mouth. I don't mean memories that merely sting. We all possess those. I am talking about a night that feels unfinished, as if something began in that garage and never truly found its way out. This happened in the early 1960s. We lived near the city center back then, but the center in those days was not the human hive it has become. The streets were desolate after twilight. The nights were denser, darker. People slept with their windows wide open and their doors unlocked because they believed that nothing ever happened. At least, that is what we chose to believe. My father was a pastor, a man of calloused hands and a rigid soul. He took whatever work put bread on the table, cook, bricklayer, handyman, and on Sundays he preached. In our house, faith was not a wall ornament. It was the structure, the routine, the order that shielded us from the chaos of the world. We lived in a narrow house with a long, dark hallway that seemed to stretch for miles before reaching the garage at the far back. The garage was separated from the world of the living by a thick, heavy wooden door, almost medieval in its weight. Every single night, without fail, my father would lock it from the outside. He said it was for our safety. I never questioned him. I believed in my father, and I believed in that lock. It was there, in that isolation of concrete and shadows, that the dog slept. I wish I could remember his name. Of all the things time has stolen from me, that is the one that hurts the most. I can still see the sheen of his black fur. I can hear the rhythm of his heavy breathing in the dark. I remember the comforting weight of his head on my lap, but the name has been burned from my mind, as if the trauma cauterized that specific part of my memory. He was massive, noble, a calm animal that seemed to understand things humans chose to ignore. During the day, he was our shadow. At night, he was our sentinel. And every night, he cried. It wasn't a territorial bark. It wasn't a complaint of a dog wanting to come inside. It was a weeping, a trembling, miserable sound, far too human to be comfortable. My parents said he would grow accustomed to the solitude, but the sound didn't fade with time. It evolved. It became a pattern. He always cried while facing the same direction, the deepest, darkest corner of the garage. I would lie awake, listening, and I could feel by the projection of his voice that he wasn't alone. He was staring at something that was standing there, waiting. Sundays were the only days we were truly left alone. My parents attended the evening services. The church was far. The ceremonies were long, filled with hymns and heavy silences. My older brother and I stayed home, enveloped by the smell of floor wax and the dim glow of filament bulbs. Until that Sunday. The air was compressed. You know that sensation when the walls seem to be moving inward, millimeter by millimeter. The heat wasn't natural. It was stifling, windless, as if the house itself were holding its breath. The dog began to scream before the sun had even set. It wasn't a whimper. It was full-throated. He clawed at the wooden door with such violence that the metal latch rattled in its socket. The sound of talons tearing through wood fiber echoed down the hallway as if it were inside my own skull. My brother shouted at me to turn up the radio. He wanted to drown it out. We tried to hide behind the music, but nothing could conceal that kind of desperation. And then, silence. Instantaneous, without warning, the kind of silence that makes your ears ring. I looked at my brother. His face had been drained of all color. He was paralyzed, staring down the length of the hallway. And then I heard it. A snap, sharp, clean, like a whip tearing through the very fabric of reality. I jumped. My heart felt as though it were trying to claw itself out of my throat. I asked my brother if he heard it. He only whispered, "Hear what?" Closer now. The sound didn't echo. It was contained. It was coming from inside the locked garage. Something was being struck with unholy force in a space that should have been empty. I felt cold sweat bloom across my spine. And then the dog screamed. I have never heard an animal scream that way. It wasn't the howl of pain. It was a human sound, forced through an animal throat, an agony that did not belong to this world. The scream was cut off by a wet, choking sound. My brother began to weep. He still claimed he couldn't hear the whip. He only heard the dog being unmade. He gripped my arm so hard his nails drew blood. I wanted to run to that door. A part of me wanted to save that animal, but something within me, something older than consciousness, told me that if I opened that door, it would turn toward me. It wouldn't look at me, it would turn. I dragged my brother into the corner of the room. We huddled behind an armchair, as if that scrap of fabric could protect us from the abyss. I covered his ears. I didn't want him to hear what came next. The whipping became frantic, rhythmless, savage, a wild, chaotic rage. I could hear the dog's body striking the floor over and over again. The silence that followed was not peace. It was an occupied silence, as if the garage were no longer empty, as if something had finished its work and was now standing there, breathing in the scent of what it had done. We stayed there, huddled in the dark, until we heard my father's car in the driveway. The relief was so violent, my legs barely functioned. I ran to the door before he could even enter. The words tumbled out of me. I spoke of the whip, the screams, the blood I was certain I would see. My father thought we were hysterical. He walked down the hallway with the authority of a man who does not believe in monsters. We followed him, pleading, clutching at his shirt, but he brushed us off like dramatic children. He turned the key. The air that rushed out of that garage was wrong. It was cold, stale. It carried the scent of a tomb that should never have been opened. The dog lay in the center of the floor. No blood, no wounds, no broken bones. He looked untouched, except for his eyes. They were wide, staring, frozen in a kind of terror I didn't know animals were capable of feeling. It wasn't the fear of pain, it was the fear of understanding. He had seen what was in that room with him. My father examined the body. He was a practical man. He searched for a logical explanation, a seizure,
a hidden heart condition, something natural. But he couldn't hold my gaze while he spoke. He buried the dog the next morning before the sun rose. He never mentioned that night again.
Some stories end, but they never leave. They stay with you long after the silence returns. So when the lights go out tonight, listen carefully. Because now, the night remembers you.